Hello and welcome to this episode of My App Tutor TV. This week we're going to be looking at a viewer's request to just have a look at how to create a panorama in a little bit more detail to what we've done previously. What we're going to do is we're going to create this panorama here from 4 images taken on an iPhone. Once we create this panorama by stitching them all together using the photo merge option in Photoshop, I will then add a little pizzazz to create this image from that panorama, making it a little bit more interesting and adding a little bit more punch to the image. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, we're going to start off by looking at the 4 images that we're going to use to create our panorama. Now these images I took on an iPhone. If I select one of them over here, you can see in the metadata it gives us the details of what sort of images we got here, and you can see that they're reasonable sized JPEGs of a resolution of 72 pixels per inch at 8-bit depth, and the rest of the details in here. It tells you it was taken on the iPhone 4S here with no flash. So the point I'm trying to make here is you can create a panorama just by using a simple camera as an iPhone camera, which is an 8 megapixel camera, by the way. Now as you can see, the images that I took, I'm just going to increase the size of this here so we can look at this in a little bit more detail. Well, they're not perfect. I've got the horizon, which is slightly skew-if on this image here, and if we look at the next image, it's also skew-if, and I've not even got the fence correct horizon straight. Even this way it's slanting a bit, so there's sort of a tendency here for me to have the horizon sort of fade off to the right hand side. And even if you look at them, well, the exposure compensation of the camera is different in each of them. And this one here, it's quite dark, and this one is lightening up a bit, and then it gets a little bit darker in this one, and then darker still because the sun is effectively behind us in this image here. Let's just decrease the size of these then so we can see all 4 images here. So the way we're going to do this is you just select the first image, and this is the order they go in. This is the leftmost image, and this one down here is the rightmost image, and that's the sort of order they go in. Now you will notice that the serial number for each image here, well, this one says 90, this 92, 94, 96. And that's because I took a few in each position here. Now when you do this, you need to be pretty quick, because if it's a windy day, for example, the clouds can change in each one, and it can create some ghosting in the panoramas. But in general, you should be alright just to be able to click away a few images on each sort of space, and then all I need to do when I take the next image is ensure that some portion of this rightmost image here, for example this fence pole here, is this fence pole you can see right here, and you can see sort of the cloud is this bit of cloud just in here, and conversely this corner bit down here, you can see this is the corner post of this horse paddock here. Well, that's the corner post just here, so I'm ensuring I've got a little bit of each image in each photograph. This corner here conversely is this corner bit down here, so you see where we're getting at. So this is how we do it. Let's click this one here. I'm going to hold shift down on my keyboard and select the last one, and then I'm going to Tools, down to Photoshop, and I want to choose Photo Merge. Let's click on that, and it opens up Photoshop, as you can see here, and also opens up the Photo Merge dialog box. And it has our images here in the order that I selected them, and we have some various options to select down the left hand side here. Now this was a cylindrical sort of panorama selection that I made. However, in this instance here, I'm going to select the auto, which is the one I suggest you start with every time. Now I'm also going to check vignette removal, and I'll just bring back Bridge here to explain why I'm going to do that. Now it's an anomaly of any camera that the corners of an image, because of the nature of a lens being spherical, that less light gets passed to the corners, and therefore you get a darkening of the corners. You can see in each one of these images the corners are slightly darker than the center, and that is just the nature of lenses. Checking on this little box here removes that darkening effect and helps to blend the images together. Geometric distortion correction, if you check this, allows for any anomalies in the lens, i.e. the lens having a slight fisheye effect, for example. It'll help to remove that. And once you have these all checked, you can just select OK, and then Photoshop will chug away, bringing these images and blending them all together, applying a mask to them so they blend seamlessly, aligning the layers as you can see it does here. So it's going to try align this fence up with the fence in the next image, and so on and so forth, so that eventually we end up with a image that everything lines up perfectly. And you can see it's creating the seamless correction, and you can see, well, I've got little lines in here. Well, that's just an artifact, don't worry about that. If we zoomed in a little bit more, you'll see that they in fact do go. So that's just an artifact of the rendering of it. Now we have got a slight bow here, and you could see that the horizon actually does go from left to right, goes sort of downhill. So the first thing I want to do in this image is just straighten it up, and we do that using the crop tool here, and I'm going to use the straighten tool in it. I'm going to ensure that I don't have the delete crop pixels checkbox checked, and then I'm going to try and eyeball how the horizon should be. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this fence here as the sort of guideline, because I know that this fence is reasonably straight. So if I just drag it along, and that is how what I want to be horizontal. So you just draw a line and then let go, and Photoshop straightens it out for you. Now I'm going to change the automatic crop in here and drag this out all the way so that the middle of it here still has some image in it, and likewise this one here I'm going to drag out all the way this way. Now ideally I don't want this person to be in it, but I do kind of like the colors that I'm getting down in the image down here, so I'm going to drag it and keep them in. I'm going to make sure that that once again is not selected, the delete crop pixels checkbox, and I'm going to confirm those changes. It'll take a second to do that. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to destroy the process that we've got here where it gets them all together. I'm going to flatten the image. The reason I want to flatten the image is because I want to use the liquify tool to increase the size of my image to fill the canvas. So with all these selected, I'm just going to right click in here and select flatten image, and you will notice that those little artifacts that we saw a second ago do disappear when I do that. So now we've got that, I'm going to come up to the filter tool here, and I'm going to go to the adaptive wide angle filter here. And the reason I'm doing that is because we still have this slight bowed horizon here, and I want to try and flatten that out a bit. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw a line. Now you'll see when I first started doing that, the software is clever enough to realize that, well, this is actually going the wrong way. It's giving a sort of bowed effect. So what I want to do is I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to try and straighten this out. Just by dragging here, and well, you see it's not giving us a very good effect here. So let's just click cancel, and first things first, I'm going to use the liquify tool to fill out these white bits, fill the canvas up. So let's go to filter, let's go to liquify, and in the tool that comes up, ensure you've got a pretty large brush, and then just select and drag, trying to do it quite quite uniformly over the image without stretching it too much, but at the same time, of course, we want to fill the whole image. I'm going to just reduce the size of it here. Smaller movements are better, by the way. The smaller the movements, so I want to try not to move the fence in any way. I want to try and keep the organic elements of the image, those things that should be straight as possible without trying to warp them. Now you can get away with the sand that's in this image here by stretching that, because of course you won't notice that it's stretched. And there you go, I've sort of got that. Now there is this slight bow that we can see in the image here through the middle of it. Let's try and see if we can fix that using the geometric distortion tool or the wide angle filter. So let's just click OK here, which will confirm those little changes we did with the liquify tool. And you see we've actually missed a bit out here. So let's just quickly go back to that filter, liquify, and just drag it down here. There we go, and click OK, and that should sort that out. And then let's try that adaptive wide angle filter here and see where we get. Well, it's not quite doing what I want. Let's see if we can change the type of correction we got here, and yeah, we're getting somewhere here. No, it's not quite working the way I want to. Perhaps we can use the liquify tool to fix this as well. So let's come back into liquify and see if we can just nudge this up, and we need to stretch this back down on the bottom here, and I think actually that's done a reasonable job. It's just a matter of fiddling with it, and once you're happy with it, let's click OK, and there you go. That creates our panorama. We can zoom in quite close here because it is quite a large image, and you can see, well, we've got a pretty good panorama image here that we've created from 4 separate images blended seamlessly together. Now let's add a little punch to this image, shall we? Let's Control 0 to bring this out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the information saved out in this image to create an HDR image. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to select the background here. I'm going to press Control J twice to create another 2 copies of that layer, and then I'm going to come down to the bottom layer here, go to the filter, and go to camera raw filter here, and I'm going to, you see it comes in upside down here, and that's because I actually took the images upside down on the iPhone. Don't worry about that, it will correct itself once we send it back into Photoshop. But I'm going to change the exposure here all the way down to 2, which brings out the sky and the blues and the oranges and whatnot here really nicely, and then just click OK, and that's that one there. So that's going to be a -2 EV level there, exposure value. The middle layer I'm going to leave as is, and the top layer here I'm once again going to go to the camera raw filter here, and I'm going to change the exposure to +2, which will really bring out the highlights in the sand area here, the grass here and the fence and whatnot, and click OK. And then what I need to do is I'm going to turn off the first 2 here, and then I'm going to save out a JPEG of this particular file. So let's go into the images in here. I'm going to change this to a JPEG file. I'm going to leave it at the default name it's given it there, and click Save. I'm going to have the quality set to maximum, click OK. Then I'm going to activate or view the next layer, and this was our baseline. This is what our image started off with. So once again, go Save As, change this to a JPEG. I need to change the number of this to 2, click Save. Once again, select OK, and then activate the last one, which was the +2 EV level. Go Save As, change this down to a JPEG, change this to 3, click Save, and click OK. And then what we want to do, and I'm just going to turn this off here so that we can see what our middle image was, so we've got something to compare our HDR result with. So let's go up to the file here. I'm going to go down to Automate, and I'm going to use the plugin HDRFX Pro 2 by Google. I'm going to select that, and in the dialog box that comes up, we'll need to select the 3 panorama images that we've just saved out as JPEGs, click Open, and they appear here in this list, and then click Merge Dialog Box. And in the resulting dialog box that comes up from there, you can see we've got the image in here, and it looks quite flat and faded out, and that's because we haven't got the correct EV values in here. Remember, this one here was -2, so let's just change that to -2, and this one here was +2, so let's change that once again to +2, like we got here. And the image still looks pretty dark in here, but don't worry about that too much. That's just giving us the preview of those 3 images sort of blended together, and it hasn't quite created the HDR yet. So let's just click on Create HDR, and it sends us back to the main interface of HDRFX Pro 2. Now once it eventually renders the image in here, we'll be able to select one of the presets we have on the left hand side here, and once again I use the Deep 1 preset most often, so I'm just going to select that, and you can see we get this really rich image in here, but it could do with just being tweaked a little. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this slider all the way down to the finishing here. I'm going to add a lens effect to it. I'm going to go for the first one we have here, which is the 1 amount, and I'm also going to slide down to the graduated neutral density. And the way this works here is the upper tonality. If you imagine there's a line drawn down the middle of this image, well, the upper tonality changes the sort of exposure value or the tone of the top of the image, and the one on the bottom changes the bottoms. Now the bottom is a bit dark in my opinion, so I want to just brighten that up a little. So we can just change this in here and just bring it out maybe to about 0.67 stops. That should do us. The sky, I like the way it is, so let's leave that as is. I want to just increase the actual temperature of this as well, because it's although it's at 0 here, it does look a little bit cold in here, and it was in reality quite cold. It was a cold day, so let's just add a little bit of warmth to that by adding about 10%, 9-10% here of the yellow temperature, as it were, which warms the whole image up nicely. And I think that'll probably do it. So let's just have a look at the exposure here and see what we can do by cranking this up. Well, it was perfect the way it was, if I'm honest. Let's just double click on the slider and it places it at 0, and just click OK. That'll give us our image returned back to Photoshop like so. I'm just going to use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-0 to maximize that view. Come back to this image, and you can see the difference in the 2 images. One last thing I want to do with this image here is I just want to amplify this lens flare we've got over here. So I'm going to select the filter. I'm going to come down to the Red Giant Software Null Light Factory, and in the dialog box that comes up, you can see that it's giving me the lens flare right up here. All I need to do is click on where I want that lens flare to be. I'm going to go for about there. It's a bit bright at the minute, so let's just tone that down a bit. And perhaps just zoom out here a little bit more. can load up any of these presets you've got in here. I'm quite happy to leave it at the one we've got, and just click OK, and it'll apply that effect to our image. And there you go, there's our final image. And because it's such a large image, you'll see that it's only at 12.3% here, so we can zoom in really quite far and still see a reasonable image here. Just Control 0 to add that on. Let's have a look at what we started with and what we finished with.